Okay, it's my pleasure to be here. My name is Todd Haim. I am the Senior Advisor in Biomedical Innovation at the National Institute on Aging. So with that role, I could say the last few days has been a lot of fun. We're going to talk about fun on this panel, so I hope you guys are ready. One of the things that I do is to work with a lot of our innovation programs, a lot of our commercialization programs, one of which is the SBIR program, which we'll hear a little bit about today. It's been in the news a lot lately, so I think it's on a lot of people's minds, as I've learned the last 3 days at every coffee break, but that's great. That's been fun. No, really, really been great. And one of the most rewarding, actually the most rewarding part of my job is when I get to see products that we help support get commercialized and get in the hands of end users. And so that's what we're going to talk today is, what is that journey like? How do you actually get there? Hopefully we'll learn kind of some of those twists and turns that happen along that journey so that people should be ready for that. So we're going to have each panel introduce themselves and their company just for a couple minutes so you understand the context of the further discussion. We'll then have some moderated discussion after that, and I really hope that you guys think of questions so that at the end, our goal will be to turn to you to liven it up even further and get some great questions on this topic. So let me first turn it to David, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. My name is David Yonce. I'm the CEO of Cogware. We are a brain health company, neuroscience company, and our focus here with the A2 Collective is to help identify, measure, and trend Alzheimer's disease and related dementias as early as possible to help give people that are at high risk and give patients more functional lifetime. We do this through a wearable device, and this is our proprietary device. It is clinical grade brainwave insights that you can get anywhere, anytime. So literally, you can walk down Constitution Avenue and get the same quality of insight as if you were in the clinic. With this and with the A2 program, we were able to optimize our machine learning algorithms to test this out to see, can we identify Alzheimer's disease and dementia? And for us, that adds on to a suite of brain health algorithms that we're using across a variety of different brain disorders.
Randall?
I'm Randy Williams, physician by training and serial entrepreneur by background. I'm an early cohort awardee from the first year at Hopkins, and we run a company called AI. We have a digital human avatar called Coach Kara that's been developed to be both audio and visual interactable with older adults on any smart device, so smartphone, tablet, PC, whatever. And we use Coach Kara to both assess in a comprehensive way what the cognitive status and abilities are of older adults, and also help to support their self-care and lifestyle modifications once they identify that they may be at risk for future decline. So it's both diagnostic and therapeutic if you want to think of it as a medical intervention, but it's really positioned as a preclinical preventative wellness and prevention program. A2, we implemented a machine learning algorithm with all the data we collect on the assessments, as well as added additional capabilities in the model around vocal biomarkers.
Hello, everybody. My name's Kyle Rand. I am one of the co-founders and CEO of a company called Rendeavor. I'm a neuroengineer by background, although as you'll see on this slide, I'm the only one without a PhD or other acronym. My friend at Cogware, I was doing a little bit of research on all of you guys last night. One of the co-founders of Cogware, Arjun, was the postdoc who I worked with at the Nicolelis lab at Duke, and he's the one who taught me about social behavioral coding. So already love
Awesome.
Cogware. I know. What I do now today, I quickly realized, as Arjun could say, I don't necessarily belong in a lab. PhD, not necessarily for me, so I transitioned into building out products. Today, I have built products and led the commercialization for nearing 40 million in revenue. The work that I do with Rendeavor, we are utilizing virtual reality to specifically overcome social isolation amongst the aging population. And we've done this through a few different ways. We're working with about 1,000 senior living communities across the US right now. And we have been blessed to work with NIA, NIH to take what we've built from a commercial revenue perspective and find additional services that really get through all the opportunities that our users are going through. So helping build better communities, helping understand, really can we understand if there is a digital biomarker for cognitive decline that allows for earlier detection. We've been able to do a lot of really good work, and we really value our relationship with the NIA.
Have you seen Mark Andreessen's Guide to a Career? One of his rules is don't get a PhD. Which is interesting for this sort of room. So my name is Kunal. I do have a PhD. I'm a faculty member at Johns Hopkins in biomedical engineering and ophthalmology. I run a lab that develops new medical devices, new therapeutics, and the entire focus of the lab is translational in nature. The goal is that everything we develop finds a way to patients and to a meaningful clinical need. So thank you for the invitation. We were lucky that I think we were in the first cohort of the A2 Awards. This led eventually to a company called Vigilant, which is focused on AI-enabled eye screening globally. So we're a commercial stage company. We have a product that allows anyone to take a high-quality image of the front of the eye and be able to diagnose conditions like cataract, stage of cataract infections, conjunctivitis, dry eye, red eye, for example. Many of you, have had this experience where you woke up, or maybe your kid woke up and they've got a red eye. You have no idea what to do. And so our technology allows anyone to learn in about 5 minutes using our hardware. It's incredibly simple to take a high-quality clinical-grade image. And now we have the world's largest database of anterior segment front of the eye images with ground truth labeling. Last year, we partnered with Google.org and Google Health to develop their models and incorporate them into our system. So this system is currently used at the 4 largest high-volume eye care systems in the world. We're also now making inroads here in the United States as well. The A2 award is really powerful for us. It allowed us to do evaluate our technology in about 1,000 patients here at the Wilmer Eye Institute at Johns Hopkins. And so incredible the amount that we were able to learn to further advance and validate our technology to start to make it accessible here in the US. Thank you.
I'm Anna Barnacka, and I also didn't get the memo about not getting the PhD, and I actually got 2. One in physics and the second one in astronomy, so very useful. And it was actually super stressful to get both PhDs and then got to Harvard. So I needed something to monitor my stress. And I was looking into monitoring brain activity because I thought, okay, if I have a way to monitor my health, I can optimize it and work for hours, solve all of the mysteries of the universe, and then plenty of time. That didn't happen, and most likely if David's device, wearable, was already available, I would just use it and would be set.
Soon enough.
But back in the day, there was no good wearables, so I thought, okay, I can use actually my skills that I was developing in astrophysics, in building telescopes and big data infrastructures, and figure out something how to monitor my health. And this is how my mic started. Very quickly, we discovered that actually the ear canal works like a speaker and is literally broadcasting every heartbeat. So from the brain, we move very quickly to the heart. And the technology that we have today that can be embedded into the earbuds, into the hearing aids, we actually have our first partnerships and revenues as well, which is getting so exciting. The technology actually enables us medical-grade data, especially around the cardiovascular system. We've done multiple clinical studies where what we have shown was that literally the way from the heartbeats we're gathering using the microphones in the earbuds or hearing aids is highly correlated, is exactly identical as the waveforms that you would have to put cardiac catheterizations into someone's heart. So this is super exciting for non-invasive, accurate data, starting with the cardiovascular health.
Great. So I started off by promising that we're going to talk about fun, right? So let's start there. Is commercializing fun? Who wants to go first on that one?
No, you guys, you're further along.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's nothing more rewarding than seeing a technology you developed actually have an impact on patient lives and provider lives. And so, I think something that's been true about our ethos and how we've worked is that everything we've done has been clinical driven, stakeholder driven. And so as soon as we identified the need that we were going to work on, we had our first prototype in the hands of providers within 2 months. And it wasn't a great prototype, but we've iterated quickly and faster to make sure that we actually develop something that fits into their context and actually useful for them. And their insights are baked into every aspect of the technology, from how it works how much it costs, how we've designed it in that way, but then also in terms of, who in their, clinical workflow can actually use it and make use of it. And so I think it's incredibly rewarding. And, the first company I started, we had a technology that was a push. We had a platform, we were figuring out where to apply it. This is so needs-driven, there was a significant pool. And the enjoyment of that is, far superior to having to find something that you have to push and figure out a way to bring forward. And so, for us, the challenge now is that we have more demand than we can actually supply and source and sustain. And so it's a lot of fun, and we feel really grateful.
You said rewarding many times before you said fun. And I would agree that, especially all the products that are being worked on within this program, it's going to be rewarding to bring it to market because what you're doing is ultimately serving a mission that is serving a really important population that we all know is often overlooked. I would say that the part that makes commercialization fun is when you take a good product approach too, which is you commercialize alongside your users, right? Like the more time you spend with the people you're ultimately trying to sell to, especially if you care about the population that you're serving, makes the commercializing fun. Like we were on a demo on Friday for a new product that we're launching where twice the senior living operator paused us so that way they could clap because they were so excited because what we were doing was we were serving a need that they have, that they face every single day. So if you architect your go-to-market in a way that you are working alongside your potential customers, the opportunity for fun exists.
Yeah, before the rest of you continue, I just want to piggyback on that point. For the innovators in the audience, one of the most important things to do is as you're developing that device, make sure you're getting input from the end users, from older adults, for those in the aging ecosystem, because that input is going to be essential, as Kyle and others have learned. So anyone else want to talk about how much fun or not fun commercializing is?
Well, I do think the rewarding piece is what brings the fun. And to your point about chasing the unmet needs, that's really where the magic happens and you see people getting excited about it. We're in limited release now, not yet in Alzheimer's or in dementia. We need to go through the FDA pathway there still. But for the areas where we are working, first time actually seeing the product work and our clients getting super excited about what it can bring because it's potentially revolutionary in the space that we were working in, that's very fun. Now, getting there sometimes is not always the most fun. I mean, let's be honest about that. There's a lot of ups and downs, but yeah, I would say the fun comes from being rewarded.
I'm going to be the contrarian. It actually is a ton of fun, and the feedback from end users or customers that are using your product is worth the journey. So anything I say to the opposite of that, discount it. But I do want to give you another perspective to think about, and that is you guys hopefully are going to try to find ways to take your technology and put it in the hands of commercial users, probably in the form of pilots. That's generally the way the world we work in works. People want to try it, make sure it's safe, effective, that works in their workflow, et cetera, et cetera. But the challenge to being an entrepreneur is that sometimes your expectations and aspirations for a pilot don't match the people who step up and say, hey, I'd like to pilot what you have. And so there are just as many kind of pilot horror stories that you might encounter. So just be prepared for that. Don't let it discourage you. Don't let it dissuade you. Stay on path, but recognize that expectation matching, especially with your first initial clients, is often a journey. You're teaching them something they don't know. They're trying something they're not familiar with. You're stretching them beyond their current thought processes and workflows. So it doesn't always turn out as well or as quickly as you might think.
Can I piggyback really quickly? To that point and the unmet need point, I think anytime that happens, because it does happen all the time, it should be an alarm bell to ask your customer or your pilot member a question that helps them go deeper, right? Maybe that there is a pivot that you need to do, maybe there's a pivot the implementation needs, or maybe there's a pivot in the way that they're training or they're working with their team members, but those are alarm bells to go deeper, which is if you do have a PhD background, you're probably naturally thinking about it anyways.
Well said.
And just to conclude the topic, our business strategy is B2B, so it's business to business. So those partnerships take so much time to commercialize. It just takes years. So before there is any real fun, once the revenue is coming, once we find the right partners, it just gets amazing because when you see the partners just jumping and ready to roll their sleeves and okay, we're going to get to the next phase together, that's fun. But it takes years to build the relationships step by step. Literally, like if you think about looking for the inspiration in the animal kingdom, that would be being a honey badger. That you're going, and I don't know if you've seen those videos from BBC about the honey badgers, like being stung by the scorpions, and the honey badgers keep going no matter what. So that's fun. Of if somebody likes to being a honey badger, you can have a lot of fun on the way. But then once it clicks and find the right partners, then it starts being a fun. But it's a long journey on the B2B.
Great. So let's go back in time, and let's go back to when you first got the pilot award. Explain to us kind of where were you in terms of funding? What other types of funds did you have? How much? What other types of key partnerships you had? And then from that point in time, you get the pilot and rocket ship, you fuel up, and you get to where you are today, or how does that exactly work? But let's start with where you were when you first got the pilot.
All right, I'll jump in. We had raised a little bit of money at the time we got the pilot. I think we were probably in the neighborhood of $400,000. We had some of our technology proven out, so our novel sensors, that was unique to us, and that's actually what got the company its initial launch off the ground. But we hadn't quite finished the device yet, got it working. And at the same time, we were talking to some strategic investors as well. So that ended up coming in parallel. What the award really allowed us to do is to say, yes, the full technology and the novel pieces of this, it actually does work. We can do what we thought we could. The dream to be able to get out there, gain brain insights, physiologic brain insights, anywhere in motion activity that was possible. And then what got us excited from the A2 award was saying, all right, all this data that we have out there about how the brain works from EEG, brainwave measures, we can pick the same thing up with our limited set of electrodes because of the quality that we have. That's really what helped get us launched. And from there, we've been building upon that for other areas as well.
So first year cohort, so this is going to date me a little bit. We had a working product that was in customer hands in a direct-to-consumer format so that we could start understanding user experience and user journey data. We had plowed about $2 million of co-founder investment. And remember that I have a background as a serial entrepreneur, so that's not an opportunity that many of you may yet have, but hang in there, you will, hopefully. But that said, not having to dilute before we were kind of to a further stage of our development was helpful. We had also applied and received an SBIR Phase 1 grant. So it was serendipitous but perfect timing for us that we could then take the A2 pilot and look at our existing grant aims and approaches and bolt some things on and think of it as more of a supplemental to what we were about with our SBIR. Again, usually it's the reverse order. We didn't have to think of it that way. So I think we're able to leverage what we had already built in terms of recruitment structure, technology, and even specific aims and approach to then take and leverage the A2 funding and support.
Yeah, those of you who know me in the audience will attest to the fact that I am consistently atypical. So Rendeavor has never really raised any traditional capital. We've built this company based on revenue, so our funding was revenue. And we run the company as a profitable entity. And so a lot of my role is figuring out, as we have more revenue, where are the areas to reinvest, or in the case of A2, co-invest as we see new opportunities. So most of our business is done in enterprise B2B settings like you. But obviously, we know just how large the quote-unquote aging-in-place industry is. And so we have always looked to the at-home population and asked, how do we go home in the right way, right? We know the populations that we survey tend to be more vulnerable. There are a lot of stakeholders, and we need to be able to do it the right way. And so when we were looking into A2, when we were looking to some of the other studies that we have ongoing, it's, for us, doing it the right way is doing it through evidence. And that is translated into, I think, everything from a commercialization aspect is people are always asking, what is the evidence, especially for the dementia population?
I would say that we're also somewhat similar. Our program has been completely bootstrapped. We've had non-dilutive funding through a few mechanisms. When we started this award, we were about a year and a half from identifying the unmet need, and I think we had about $100,000 non-dilutive funding from the Able Foundation, VentureWell, a Microsoft award. So it was enough for us to have a prototype that worked, that was in the hands of some of our users, particularly in South India. And we had a prototype that we felt like, hey, there's a need here in the US market as well that we can start to go after, and that was really what we wanted to investigate with the A2 award. And so, very early on, this is all in the research phase, all, in my lab at Johns Hopkins, so very early on in that regard, but, we had clear hypotheses on what we wanted to go after and understand and identify through the award. I'd say that we had some additional support. What's been kind of really powerful for us overall is that several years before this, we developed these strong partnerships with the 4 largest high-volume charitable eye care systems in the world. Collectively, they see about 12 million patients a year. They do several hundreds of thousands of surgeries every year. You can compare that to a place like Wilmer at Hopkins, which is, world-renowned eye institute, but only does 15,000 procedures a year. And so we felt like these are partners. If we really want to develop technologies in ophthalmology, we want to bring them to market quickly and at a low cost, and we want to scale their impact globally. These are partners for us to work with to do so. And so they've been a really enabling force for us. We can talk to the leaders of any of these hospitals tomorrow. Are you going to adopt this? What do you need to be able to adopt this? What do you need to see? What should our pilots look like with you? Are you okay if we get these in the hands of some of your people? And all that stuff can happen pretty quickly. And so the ability to iterate with them, work closely with them, deeply understand the need with them, and have them kind of co-develop the product with us was highly enabling. Around the same time that we got this award, we got an R21, R33 from NIH. And so that allowed us to actually, in parallel, we did a 1,000-patient trial with the A2 award here in the US, and we did a 1,000-patient trial in India with our partners there as well.
And actually, on our side, when we started with A2 Collective program, we already raised about $10 million, actually building technology that is completely novel. It's quite expensive. And we had to build infrasonic lab, because what I haven't mentioned is that what we're detecting is frequencies below 20 hertz. There is not even standards for this, how to measure that. All of the microphone specifications usually end up around 20 hertz. So we had to figure out from scratch, literally, how to build the specification, how to measure that. We built an infrasonic lab. This allowed us, because we were tapping into completely new space that no one was really looking into before. We were able to build a very big IP portfolio, which was also great, also very expensive. So basically everything that we were touching on the way of building this technology was super expensive. So building the lab, building the IP portfolio, doing the clinical trials as well. So at the time of A2 Collective, we already had the trials done with the Scripps Health, with the Prisma Health, but they were all done in the hospitals. And we were just getting our first prototypes, literally the first earbuds that were truly wireless. So when we started A2 Collective program, this allowed us, especially working with UMass team that did incredible job with helping us setting up the study, with the participants, that they would use our earbuds, those new units that were coming literally out of the manufacturer, literally the first units, so that we could also use those studies not only to collect great data from people at home with regular settings, but also use it as alpha testing of that new hardware as well. But we had to get to that point, we had to already invest about $10 million. At that time was mostly in individual investors. We didn't have yet strategics. Actually, strategics came later. And going back how long that journey is, having A2 Collective and new results that we're building on what we already had, that was extremely important for us.
Great. So I think we're hearing a mix, right? So 3 of you had what I would call significant resources, from the individual founder money to the investment. You had revenue and SBIR, I believe, at the time. And then a couple of you maybe did not have as much resources in the company. So then explain to us kind of how did the pilot award specifically, what were the resources that you got from the pilot award? Not just the money, if you could, but the other resources that you were able to get by working with these 3 accomplished centers. And then I'm guessing from that point on, it took more than $250,000 to get towards commercialization. So how did it help you get other funds along that way?
I'll be happy to go for it. So I would say it's not a ton of money, right? In the scheme of things, it's going to take a lot more than what that grant single-handedly represents. So it isn't, you shouldn't, I mean, I wouldn't even think about it as, gee whiz, there's some money. It's all about the reputational improvement you gain from being part of such a prestigious collective, for passing muster at that level of peer review, for the opportunity to validate what you're up to against some rigorous thought partnership that you gain from the organizations you're partnering with. I would say that beyond that, one of the things I took advantage of, and I hope all of you may as well, the stakeholder core group was particularly helpful. I got to meet one of my friends from the stakeholder core group, hi Lily, here at the conference. It was super fun. And the other thing that we were able to take advantage of was a collaboration with the business school associated with our facility or site, and the graduating class of MBA students who did some wonderful research to help us on our go-to-market thought process and plans.
I think we can all agree here that probably the biggest benefit, aside from the money, has been the network, right? I think Han put it perfectly last night, where this is a room full of intelligence and humility, and those are always the rooms that you want to be in, so kudos to all of you. I think one of the realities of building a company is there's this weird dual reality where it's really important that you accelerate to being able to stand on both of your own 2 feet to keep building the company, and you can't do it alone. So really, community is everything. And then for us specifically, the team at Mass AITC has been amazing. I think their friendship alone has been awesome. But in a world where AI is quickly accelerating and ML experts are getting offers of 7 to 9 figures to join major tech companies, to be able to lean on institutes with real resources, real expertise has been just incredible.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, we similarly benefited quite a bit from the stakeholder core, and from some of the students that Phil works with that were helpful in developing our go-to-market strategy. What was really most useful, I think, was we were able to hire a really dynamic engineer. So Phil and I only realized this Wednesday, but we only asked for $100,000. Somehow we thought that would give us a better chance of getting the funding, and maybe it did or it didn't. And so we tried to do a lot with that. So what was most useful for us was, one, just the validation, hey, we're on to something that's being recognized, and 2, just giving us a little bit more runway, which at the very early stage, a little bit more runway makes a big difference. And then, 3 was we hired a really dynamic engineer who, went out and she recruited these 1,000 patients. Early on, she found out that, hey, like our imaging device wasn't working as well with, patients with dark colored eyes versus lighter colored eyes. That led to some pretty significant advances in our technology, including in our IP, and some really cool things that we did in terms of how do we enable equity as it relates to imaging different types of patients. And so those have all been fundamental and all now baked into our current product, which is now being used around the world. And so lots of really useful things, but just the small things about hiring the right people and getting going on advancing the technology itself were helpful.
And just to add to it, in our case, the very important component and extremely useful was all of the data that we have collected from that study. And we work with the team at UMass, and they did such an amazing job with putting together, helping us think through the protocol. And it's a lot of knowledge and skill that goes into creating those studies in the way that then data can be useful for many years. And actually, those data that we collected for the collective, we're still using, and we keep analyzing. We have achieved the goal. We were focusing primarily on the vascular aging to show that with those data we can also look into those metrics. But we keep using it. It's really amazing, like how much, because we had such a great team that was coming with those resources. It was so well executed through UMass, and also so well designed. So we keep using those data. So that was really, really amazing, and we still can get even more out of it. And it comes with that kind of network, that kind of experience that is impossible to have alone in-house. But we could also learn a lot through that collaboration.
Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts from me. So I do want to build on the issue of validating and providing credibility, especially for an early company. One of the things about raising funds and raising more money, which most of us, and by the way, I'm jealous of you two heavily, but most of us will have to do is the more that you can do to show that your concept and your company is a credible one, that will help as you talk to other advisors. So NIA helps, the A2 Collective helps tremendously. And then thinking about our journey, I'm from out of the Penn AITech Collective, and the folks that we were working with, and especially our coaches, there's two things that jumped out at me early on. One is we tailored our study, and we added some things in that was beyond what we had initially thought of. And their counsel helped us think through this. Not only how do we get the information and data that we need, but how does this prepare us to be more successful moving forward to set us up for that next step? And so that turned out to be extremely valuable. And the second thing that the Penn AITech Collaboratory did was would set up several times just discussions with stakeholders. So clinicians who are involved with dealing with dementias, dealing with Alzheimer's patients, and gave us the opportunity in a forum to go through and really do almost ethnographic research, really, to ask them about how they go through their job process, what are the big unmet needs they have, show us our technology, get their impressions. To the points that were raised earlier, are we really going after something that has unique unmet need? So the answer is yes, but is our implementation one that's going to fit their workflows in something that they would then adopt? And that has been very valuable for us.
So I'm having a lot of fun, but I want to invite you all in on the fun as well. So I have another question, but while I'm asking that, if anyone does have questions, please come over to the microphones so we can bring you into this conversation. So following up on both stakeholders, investors, could you all speak to what you then did next in terms of how did you demonstrate value to the stakeholders and investors that you needed to move forward? And then also for the other earlier pilot awardees in the audience, how did you decide which stakeholders, what types of investment, dilutive, non-dilutive, to really go after? Because there's a lot of different options out there. Not always easy options, but there's a lot of different options. So if you can kind of bring us back to how you made those decisions and why.
Yeah, I guess I'll start on this, and I'll tackle the investment piece. On the types of investment, I guess my answer is yes. It really is cast a wide net. One of the things in the last talk that I took away was a concept about pivoting. I always try to plan pivots into the company, be it from a market standpoint or plan it in from a fundraising standpoint. So non-dilutive capital, fantastic. You can get it in. You don't have to dilute the existing shareholders. It is a long process. It's not always feasible. And if you put in for a grant, you may not get it. So then in parallel, working on other forms of funding has been valuable for us. We've had angel investors in. We're about to close a round with the first substantial venture investors. And what I would say is that if you look at traditional med tech, and I know digital tech's a little bit different. Kyle, you sound like you're a major outlier in the industry. So, that's tremendous success. But typically, raising money to get a medical device product, certainly FDA cleared, off the ground, you're going to spend most money in commercialization. And I don't mean getting the product to the FDA. I'm talking about once you're approved from the FDA, is then getting it out and growing a sales team, forming a sales team, growing it. Because at that point, if you're looking to grow your company, and especially if the model is to ultimately be acquired by a larger strategic, your month-on-month, and I've even heard week-on-week sales growth that is the most important thing to you. And it's very unlikely that you're going to do that without having substantial venture capital investment or some large institutional investment. And I bring that up now because even if you're thinking, okay, right now with my technology, I can get a long way with SBIR grants, I can get a long way with angel investing, that's great. But the timeline to bring venture investment in, it's getting longer. The access to venture capital is getting, at least in the last year and a half, is less than it was prior. So casting a wide net and starting those networking relationships now, I think, is a very valuable thing. And I had a chance to talk to Steven, and I gave him congratulations. I thought this type of event and networking is having the reverse pitch in the pitch today and having those folks here, very valuable. So I would encourage everybody, any opportunity you have to talk to an investor and share your story and see what they're about, because it's a matching process. And you really have to think about it as that this is your first sales process that you're going through to raise substantial money, and it's a long one.
Most of us had to come through a stage where the first thing we had to prove was that the people who we thought would use our solution would actually use it. And so I would say, in terms of providing customers with some evidence that they should talk to you about a purchase, the most important thing for us to show was that we understood how to acquire users, that the users stuck around and used the product and had a good experience with it. And so and then with regard to capitalization and capital formation in general, I mean, my only kind of gray hair on this is the longer you can hold off on bringing in outside money, the more likely you will be to be able to take the time it takes to sort out how to get there. The challenge to raising money is you have to have already, in a sense, proven that what you're selling them is working before they'll give you money to prove that it works. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. If you can at all possible, delay funding from outside dilutive, in particular, investors for as long as you can. The ideal investor for many people may be also a customer. So there's nothing better than a customer who says, oh, I'd be happy to invest in you by paying you for what you're going to do 6 months ahead of actually getting it delivered. That's ideal.
You still have to vet them, and they should be a big enough customer. I think the way we kind of look at this and the map of what we do is that, you know, my previous company, we went through the hard lesson of what happens when you pivot from B2B to B2C. Actually, with that one, it was B2C to B2B. So for us, again, as we look at the market, as we look at where we can grow, as we can keep pushing the boundaries, it's getting out of the senior living buildings, getting out of the hospice organizations, getting out of B2B, and going into the home. But anybody who's had to commercialize direct to consumers will tell you it's expensive, it's hard, and there's a million more ways that it could fail, right? There's something really beautifully sticky about a solid enterprise product. And so we look at a lot of the work we do is the biggest possible way to impact people is to go into that environment. But again, we just have to do it the right way, and we have to do it with the right partners. And it's not just us that think that, it's really everybody.
You know, for us, after we finished the award, it was really validation that we do have a product that works and it works for our providers. And so really from there, we probably spent about 6 months just formalizing our core. So who's the core team and roles, putting IP in place, all the things they actually need to do to actually bring a product to market to raise external investment. So we spent probably about 6 months kind of getting those things right. Then we incorporated the company afterwards. And then, you know, we went through a couple different approaches. We actually applied to a couple of accelerators. We thought that might be useful for us at that stage. We said no to one that was going to take equity, and we actually went with one that was completely non-dilutive, a group called Fast Forward in San Francisco. And I would say there have been several, you know, aspects of our journey that have completely changed the trajectory and the upside for the company. Fast Forward was one of those. And similar to A2, you know, really powerful group that is in your corner, wants to help, will make any introduction for you, will find a way. I remember one of the people in the cohort asked, hey, what do you do if a funder just stops, you know, following up with you? And their response was, that doesn't happen with our funders. And so they've been really powerful for us in terms of what is possible. And so they've brought in several other funders that have come in and kind of become champions for our company and advocates for our company. You know, after that, we went to, you know, actually we were afraid that, you know, so this R21, R33 grant that we had that was supporting a lot of our work internally within Hopkins, you know, our approach has always been, can we get technologies as far as possible within Hopkins with non-dilutive funding until essentially it's ready for a sale or ready to go to a clinical trial. We were afraid at the beginning of last year that our funding was going to get canceled because we had a subboard in India. And so that really started to push us to look at what are other sorts of funding that are out there for us. And we started thinking about, could we use generative AI models and LLMs? And so that led us to apply for Google's generative AI accelerator. And so, you know, that brought in about $1.75 million into the company. Again, another thing that just changed the trajectory of the company is potential. significantly. And so I think taking advantage of those types of opportunities can make a big difference, and essentially finding networks like this one where there are advocates for you, there's resources and opportunities to design a future for your company that wasn't there before. But before doing that, making sure you have the core in terms of your technology, your unmet need, your core team in place.
And I fully support all of the directions that panelists were taking. So the best are non-dilutive and revenue. I had a very different story because in my case, I was a postdoc, so not enough funding to fund company by myself. And also when I was starting, I was still on J1 visa. And I think you have to have a green card actually to be a PI. So from that perspective, I could not go and start applying for the grants. But I already had, I spent as much time and resources out of the pocket. I also had to figure out the technology that would be easy to be built out of the postdoc salary. So I already had the prototype that, like with big Arduino with things going to the ear, showing great data. Again, I could not afford just going and paying IP lawyers. So actually, I took a class at Harvard how to write the IP. And actually, I drafted my first patent as well. And back in the day, the markets were pretty good. So I was actually able, with that prototype, with the first draft of the patent, was able to actually start raising the first money. Because the idea was big and the dream was big, and like I want to build it, and I will keep moving until it's in every earbud and every hearing aid. And we're getting there step by step. It takes a lot of time, but we'll get there. So in my case, just to summarize, I went for the investors to build the technology, because a lot of different resources at that time were not available to me, and also I had to raise the money, otherwise I would have to leave the country and so on. So extra source of pressure.
I mean, as an investor, it's hard to say no to somebody like that. Hey, like someone who says, "Hey, I don't have the money for a patent. I'm going to write it myself." And I've got a technology. This is my life's mission. I want to make sure everyone has access to this. And if this doesn't work, I've got nothing as a backup. So I think from an investor funder perspective, I think that's incredibly powerful. And it's not easy to do, but it's very powerful. That's the kind of person you want to bet on.
And then you throw
Thank
in,
you.
by the way, I'm an astrophysicist.
2 PhDs. Yeah.
With 2 PhDs.
2 PhDs.
Know nothing about business.
But I think
But-
if you're a pilot awardee listening, like, it's more true today than it was even 10 years ago. There's not a single way to build a company. And once you decide on how to build a company, there is essentially a threshold that you step through that there is no turning back. And so you have to do so with conviction.
So just a reminder, any questions, please come down to the mics. And yes, I encourage all the pilot innovators, continue to engage with NIA. We have so many different resources for innovators that we're hearing about, the R61, R33, obviously the pilots, obviously SBIR. We also have a startup challenge and accelerator, seeing some of our alumni here from that as well. So on that topic of accelerators, actually, I'm going to put 2 questions out so you guys can each choose, but between all of us, I think you'll cover both questions. So first question, which is accelerators. So that was mentioned by a couple of you. Speak a little bit more to that value. How do you choose which ones? Some of them take equity. That is a cost that you have to consider. So if you could talk to us about kind of the value and the cost and that ratio, that would be great. And then we are at an AI meeting, right? Yeah. Okay, so next question, a little different, but that commercialization journey, which we learned is fun, by the way. You know what else is fun? And all of you through your pilots are going to make fun? Aging. And remember that aging can be fun, and that's the goal here. So anyway, back to commercializing is fun, right? So AI, how has AI changed that journey? How has it affected how you operate your company, how your marketing? If you could speak to that AI point as well. So accelerators, AI, both, or whatever else you want to talk about.
I'm happy to start on accelerators first. I think that, for us, I started a few companies before. The other members of our core team hadn't. And so I felt personally that going through an accelerator, kind of giving them that experience, formalizing what we were doing, getting to this point where, hey, it's no longer do we go or not go, but we're hitting go and we have to be successful. There's whether we pivot 100 times, we're going to find a way to be successful at the end of the day. And so I think that was part of our decision making, was it'd be good to kind of go to a group that can help formalize, give us best practices, and start to kind of build additional resources behind us. We applied to, as I mentioned, one that would take equity, one that wouldn't. We felt at the end of the day, the one that wouldn't was actually the better fit for us in terms of what we wanted to do. There's an ethos within our company that, there's both large markets that we can sell at high margins. There's also large markets where there's a major unmet need and nobody else is going to address that unmet need at scale, and that we can uniquely do so. And so we felt like that accelerator is a better accelerator for us. You're bringing other people into your company as advisors. Sometimes they have a fiduciary role. We felt like that was a better one for us to achieve both our impact, objectives, but then also to build a company that's going to generate revenue, be sustainable, and have an impact in developed markets as well. So it was really kind of that fit in terms of what we ultimately want to achieve as our company and as people who are pioneering this company forward. From an AI perspective, we first started with a device and just, hey, can we make it easy to take high-quality images, enable telemedicine-based review of those images? Uniquely, no one had been really taking images like we were. Most of you, if you've gone to an ophthalmologist, you get a front of your eye exam using a slit lamp. They don't usually take an image unless you got something really fun they want to, put into a journal or a case study. And so, so as we were doing this, we realized we were developing the only database, and now the largest database of these anterior segment, images. And so that's really kind of what has enabled us from an AI perspective. We partner with Rama, who's also part of A2 and a pioneer with an AI overall. What I found is that our customers actually, in some cases, don't need the AI, but the AI has been really powerful to incorporate into our products from a funding perspective. And so, Google, for example, has become one of our champions. In low resource settings, we found that the ability to leverage AI to task shift and address challenges in terms of shortages of personnel has been incredibly powerful. Here in the US, we don't see that kind of value proposition as much, and there's also a much more significant regulatory burden. And so we're first just kind of selling our products directly into these spaces, and then AI is something that we'll layer on afterwards.
We grew up in Boston in kind of pre-pandemic times, and so there were a lot of accelerators. There were a lot of also like networks that were starting around aging. So we spent a lot of time in the accelerator space, non-dilutive mostly only. The one that we went deepest with, of course, is the AgeTech Collaborative by AARP. We've gone very, very deep. We were one of the first companies before it was even called that. And I think what a lot of accelerators do today that AI can also help with is strategic thinking. But what you can't replace from an accelerator, from a collaborative like AARP, is, again, the network, right? Like, as Anna said, in order to commercialize, especially if you're thinking B2B, you need a lot of validity, you need a lot of proof, you need a lot of people pointing at you and saying that that's a company worth considering, and that happens through people. You can't replace that with AI.
We had an opportunity to participate in, I'll loosely describe as 2 accelerators. One of them, like Kyle, was the AARP AgeTech Collaborative. The particulars of that, from our perspective, was it was a more bespoke model, which allowed us to come in with a set of issues and questions and needs we wanted to understand, and then do really structured, formal, extensive market and client research. But it was all customizable to where we were at and what we were trying to figure out. The other one was the I-Core program from NIA, and I want to give a shout out to that because one of the things that many of you who haven't been in business before should take a look at is something called the Business Model Canvas. It's a wonderful framework for thinking through what's the value proposition that ultimately you're going to try to put in front of customers, and which ones, and how do you get to them, through what channels, how do you make money, et cetera, et cetera. And that framework is really in a sense, the marching order of the I-Core program. It's all about how you think through and put those together and leverage those. So those are both very useful. In terms of AI, hey, look, we're a AI native company, right? It's in the name of the business. So we've been about AI from day one. So what I've watched, we came back, we had patents in the machine learning and AI arena that we brought to the company. We've been an ML forward infrastructure from day one, very data driven, et cetera. The thing that I've seen transform in the last year or two is really the pace at which AI has freed up our technical staff to be way more creative and move faster. But on the flip side, on the business side, that same pace of change has driven a lot more business strategy thinking around what's your moat. At the end of the day, you don't want your LLM partner to be chewing you up in 3 years. So figuring out what differentiates you and makes you unique and is defensible long term is really critical in the era of AI. Speed is no longer an advantage.
So I want to jump in just real quick on the accelerator piece. We went through a couple different I-Core, and then when I joined the company, the founders had just been through an accelerator. So I'm not actually a founder, although I tell people when I joined we had a concept in $87, so we kind of I am in a way. But just a little bit of a watch out. I think everything that was said here on the accelerators is absolutely true. So if you don't have a business background, it's almost like you get a mini MBA on how to start a business through the accelerator. Extremely valuable if you haven't gone through that before. If you have been through it, you have an MBA, okay, you're gonna be refreshing concepts, and it's a good framework to map out the business. Where I think the caution comes in is the real value in that is what do you get afterwards? Where does that lead you to the credibility, the funding, and the future things? And for our experience, when I joined, everyone was giddy. They had won the pitch competition at the accelerator, gone through the whole program, had this big list of investors. So we did our strategic analysis, went back 6 months later, it was crickets. And no one had any money, and we were like, oh yeah, we're just there to advise, and like, oh, well, this is great. So we're starting from scratch. Thankfully, this was non-dilutive, so there was nothing associated with it. But I bring this up because one of the things that I still get hit up almost on a daily basis is, oh, we'll help you frame out your business. All we want is this much equity, or give us $25,000 up front, we'll frame this out for you. There is a lot of noise in the marketplace that's going after founders who are looking for money or looking for business strategies. So I would say vet those very carefully, because it's been my experience that many of them are not going to provide the value that they suggest they're going to provide, and some of them are even doing things that are in afoul of SEC regulations, and our lawyers would say absolutely do not engage with those folks. So be careful.
I see we do have a question. Please.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your entrepreneurial journeys. And I was wondering, what are some of the biggest missteps you've made along the way? What did you learn in that process? And if they were really big, how did you recover from that?
Now everyone's quiet, huh? The
okay.
fun has stopped.
That's a fun question.
Yeah, right. There went the fun. For me personally, again, having done it once before, the biggest missteps are always around people issues, right? I mean, hiring the wrong people, partnering with the wrong people, and getting investment from the wrong people. And so, I mean, and some of that's just plain simply not avoidable. It's going to happen. So learning how to be kind of quicker to cut bait, quicker to screen, or a little more rigorous on the due diligencing and things like that. So that would be my 2 cents.
I would just add, I think that when you do it wrong, it can kill the company, and it makes things a lot less fun. When you do it right, to me, that's the greatest actually joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to run with a group of people that are mission aligned, are complementary to you, and that together you can do things that alone you can't. Like, that's the true joy to me of a startup. And so to me, I think that's the most important thing to get right. I think a nuance for us is that we do have one co-founder who loves to say yes to everything. Hey, we can do this. Yeah, we can do that. Let's solve this problem. Let's try this. What about this? And I think especially when you're early stage, you don't have a lot of resources. You don't have a lot of bandwidth. You've got to really focus and hone in on like what is the unmet need that you got to solve. What's the the MVP of that product that you can get in someone's hands for them to actually start to use and be willing to adopt.
I don't know if it's necessarily a misstep, but for me, one of the biggest learnings going through this, and all the stuff you brought up about sometimes you make a bad hire, you might have an investor that comes on early. Those are natural, and sometimes I look at it as sometimes you just got to do what you got to do for the business, and that will get you to the next step, and that's all very valuable. I think thinking about it, say, if this does go south, am I okay? is the business so okay? And can we get beyond it? And yeah, it might hurt a little bit, but is the business still solvent? So that's a big thing. And then for me, the biggest learning, and I don't know if it's a messed up or not, but I vastly underestimated the duration and the effort involved with raising money. And I say that just, full disclosure. I have been, my background, I had a startup very early on, but we never did a substantial raise at that point in my career. And then I've been on the other side of the fence, so strategic investing and been in big companies. But there have been some pretty tremendous swings, I would say, in the market just for capital in the last 5-6 years that I've been doing this. And it's a long process and it's a long sales process. So that's why, to my comment before, is start early. It's all about the networking, more so than I realized.
Well, final comment?
Oh, I'm happy to share one of my mistakes. And also that's something that I guess may resonate with a lot of people that are first-time funders, and you bring the investors. And the one thing that I would say that's my big recollection and the point that I've been thinking a lot about was actually around commercialization. Because investors was like, Anna, you're astrophysicist, you have to bring professional business development people. And I did. And they were great. They were smart, they were amazing, they had a lot of background. None of them was able to close the partnership.
You need the founder magic.
You need the funder. And when I stopped having the professional business development people last year, I closed 2 partnerships, and I'm closing the 3rd one. So that was such a big lesson that no one will do it for you. The first few partnerships is the funder.
I would love to add to that. I think oftentimes when you're a first-time founder and a young founder, especially when you're a technical founder, you can give a business plan that is beautiful and that can work, but the feedback you'll get is you don't have an MBA. You need somebody on your team that has an MBA. I started my first company when I was in college as an undergrad, and this is the feedback I got. We wanted some non-dilutive funding. We went to our first investor, and that was when people actually did business plans. I handed him a 100-page business plan. He said, yeah, this all looks great. The numbers all work out, but you don't have anyone with an MBA on your team. And then I hired a guy with an MBA on our team. He was my first ever hire, my first ever fire. And so I think don't underestimate yourself in terms of what you can make happen and what you can do. Absolutely, just like you did. And more and more so, I actually find that the most talented VCs and funders are not looking for that. Yeah. They just want to bet on the most talented person and assume that they'll figure it out, and we'll help them to figure it out.
Can I add one last point?
Final point.
All right. Commercialization genuinely is fun, and it is important to keep going. I think one of the reasons that it can be a little bit less fun is that the reality is the more you commercialize, the more you go, you're going to make 5-figure mistakes. You're going to make 6-figure mistakes. You're going to make 7-figure mistakes. That's just part of the process of growth. And I think to maybe make it a little bit more positive as a final note, it's really, really important who you work with. And if you're a pilot awardee, it's really important who you call a co-founder. Because I would not be where I am right now without an incredible co-founder relationship. But that goes, of course, the rest of your team. Final piece of advice, there's a lot of aphorisms that you really should lean on as a startup founder. One of them is to hire slow, fire fast. We can all agree that that is a legitimate piece of advice.
Okay, well, on that note, thank you all. I think that this was a lot of fun talking about commercializing, innovation, funding, which, by the way, you cannot spell funding without fun. So thank you.